back and see that we were the guys in there murdering and invading and not there to do something that is honourable.
They are Australia's elite special forces, the lethal operatives of the Special Air Service Regiment, the SAS. For more than a decade, they were on the front lines of Australia's longest war.
You try to look back at your career as try and be proud of it, but then you've got all these incidents. You see yourself as part of the bad guys.
Yeah, which one is cancer stuff, which one not?
Yeah.
Tonight, the deadly operations in Afghanistan with Australia's secretive SAS.
Rosa, for fuck's sake. Yeah, get the fuck here. Yeah.
Revealed in never-before-seen footage obtained by Four Corners. For the first time, a Special Forces operative who was on these covert missions speaks out about what he saw.
The guy had his hands up, and then it was almost like target practice for that soldier. He shot him, twice through the chest and then once through the head as he walked past him.
For years, the secrets about what exactly happened in the valleys, fields and mud villages of Afghanistan have remained hidden. With a major inquiry about to report on suspected war crimes, Four Corners will tonight reveal the culture of impunity among some of our special forces, as well as proof captured on camera of a cold-blooded killing. In your opinion, were war crimes committed in Afghanistan by Australia's Special Forces?
Yes, there were. You can't shoot unarmed people and not call that murder.
Afghanistan 2012. The brutal conflict was in its 11th year. Braden Chapman was on his first deployment. A signals intelligence officer fresh out of training with the SAS, he was struck by a country mired in war.
I thought it was a really beautiful country. You had snow-capped peaks. Where the rivers were, it was really green in the valleys. And I used to say to people, it would be a great place for forward driving and outdoor adventure if you didn't have all the war.
Braden Chapman would get to see much of the beauty of Afghanistan from a Black Hawk helicopter. He would also see much of the war's brutality during his deployment with the elite 3 Squadron SAS.
There's definitely a buzz of elitism because it is the best thing you could do for your career to go to that unit, especially when you're a lower rank and you're actually going to get to do a lot of hands-on stuff. You definitely feel confident with these guys. I never once felt like I was going out and I was unprotected. I never felt like we weren't going to get through it.
It was Braden Chapman's job to find Taliban targets by intercepting and tracking their communications.
If we were going out on a mission where we were chasing a mobile phone target, then I would be with either myself or the other signals intelligence operator. Would be with the teams and we'd be going in close and tracking that phone. Often when they hear the helicopters coming in, they would actually turn their mobile phones off.
Within days of deploying with the SAS in Afghanistan, Braden Chapman got a sense of what was to come during a conversation with one of the squadron's senior soldiers.
I was at the same bench as him, prepping my equipment, and he just kind of started some general chit-chat, and then he said to me, I hope you're ready and prepared for this deployment because you need to make sure that you're okay with me putting a gun to someone's head and pulling the trigger because I don't want to read about it in 10 or so years.
What did you think when you heard that?
I knew he was a bit of a loose cannon anyway, but yeah, at the time I was just kind of like, okay, that's how you're going to be.
This is a highlights reel of 3 Squadron's 2012 rotation in Afghanistan, edited together and set to music by SAS soldiers themselves. It's among more than 10 hours of SAS footage captured by the soldiers on their own cameras and obtained by Four Corners. It gives a rare glimpse of the reality on the ground and how these elite special forces view themselves. It shows a brotherhood forged by firefights and the adrenaline of daily raids and operations outside the wire.
When we'd go in, if we found a small cache in an area and it was just in somebody's side room attached to a house, they'd often just light it on fire or blow it, depending on how much time they had. And that would usually burn down the house or blow out a wall.
So, not exactly a way of winning hearts and minds, in your opinion?
No.
Fucking hell. I think I was a bit in the open there.
Often they'd read out the numbers of how many cars they'd blown up, or dogs they'd shot was another one. They were pretty quick to shoot dogs.
And why were dogs shot?
There was a threat to our own dogs, so they were worried about that.
No, get him.
But I did see them shoot dogs that were tied on chains, which were clearly not a threat.
And back to you for a stunt.
Kick the shit out of that cunt.
Shut the fuck up. Shut up.
Over time, Braden Chapman became disillusioned with the war and what the Special Forces were doing.
We try and say that we're there to help and the Taliban are bad, but if we go in and we start destroying infrastructure or destroying their private vehicles and burning down their homes, it doesn't really send the right message.
We're in fucking Mogadishu. Fucking smoke.
And as soon as they leave, they're not going to help us anymore. They're just going to run straight back to the Taliban, who usually are not doing that.
Braden Chapman says the information the SAS relied on to capture or kill their targets was often vague.
We would get intelligence briefs. They would be saying stuff like, you know, fist-length beard, wearing Afghani clothes. Just really basic descriptions of people, unless they had a photo, which they didn't always, and more times than not they didn't.
So it could be anyone in the population?
No idea who it is. But most of the time it was a really simple description of the average Afghani man.
By the end of 3 Squadron's 4-month deployment in 2012, more targets had been killed or captured than on any previous Australian Special Forces rotation in Afghanistan.
We were pretty much out every day for 4 months straight. I can't remember the exact numbers, but at the time I remember someone saying that we captured the most people for an SOTG deployment up until that time.
So you were busy?
We were busy.
For the Australian military, the war in Afghanistan was centred on one province, Uruzgan. For 13 years, the Australians fought to stabilise this poor and mountainous region, losing 41 soldiers along the way. The Special Forces would do the vast bulk of the fighting and killing, conducting thousands of operations.
The vast majority of our special operations soldiers are highly professional and, quite frankly, remarkable men. Highly trained, highly professional men of high integrity who have done a very, very demanding job for us in very arduous circumstances.
Glenn Kolomitz was a military lawyer who advised Special Forces on the legality of their Afghanistan operations.
I was involved in planning day and night for daytime operations and nighttime operations, and there was always an element out in the field, always. So there was always some activity happening outside the wire. There was a very high operational tempo whilst on rotation.
He taught them who they could lawfully target and who they were forbidden to kill, including people who had surrendered or were wounded.
So would you say that these special forces knew about the rules of war?
Intimately.
So there's no excuses for committing any sort of breach outside the rules of engagement or any crime for that matter?
No excuse in terms of the training is provided and the understanding, absolutely.
Just weeks into Braden Chapman's deployment in early 2012, his patrol is going hunting. They're heading for a place called Dehrawad. Their target, a Taliban bomb maker. The entire operation is captured on a helmet camera worn by one of the SAS soldiers on this raid. What this video reveals is a deadly firefight at a Taliban bunker that would go on to spark lethal retribution by one SAS soldier.
I landed with one patrol, and as we came up over a hill, we heard gunfire, and then from there we could see that the patrol that was walking across the front of a mud hut was getting shot at. When I came over the hill, the soldiers looked like little ants running everywhere, trying to get away.
The SAS are accompanied by Afghan special forces known as the Wakunish. The Australians call them whackers.
That patrol that came under fire, they had a Wakunish with them. He was killed pretty much instantly and right in front of the entrance to the mud hut. I believe there are at least 4 people in there, maybe 5. And there was one guy with a PKM who was laying in the entrance, and he was just firing out the entire time until they started throwing grenades in there.
One Australian soldier wants to throw in a thermal grenade and destroy the entire structure. Leading the charge is an SAS operator who we'll call Soldier A.
And even as other soldiers came in to assist and they had grenades with them, he was like, give me the grenade. And they were handing him over to him and he was finishing it off. And he was telling everyone else to get back.
Why was he so fired up?
He started it and he wanted to finish it.
Get the fuck out of the way, cunt! Get out of there!
I'm not sure what his mindset is, but it seems almost like a bloodlust once you get to that stage.
One soldier wants to get an attack helicopter to send a Hellfire missile into the bunker.
Oh, we can pull back and hellfire.
Soldier A then begins firing through a hole into the bunker.
Oh, let's get him out of here. I've got him, mate. Oh, let's drag him out. Go.
Soldier A orders one of the SAS corporals to throw in a thermal grenade.
Once he got his thermo grenade in, it completely collapsed the mud hut. And from there, yeah, he just kept spraying.
Fucking dog.
They were no longer firing once the thermo grenade went off. Those things turn your insides to jelly.
Dusty, here.
The battle over, the SAS medic Dusty can finally get to the Afghan Wakunish soldier who's been shot at the front of the bunker.
Hey, he's fucking dead.
With the dust of battle still in the air, members of the SAS patrol on the ridge above pause to reflect on the battle.
How'd that whacker look?
He's dead.
Where'd he cop him?
All up his side, machine gun burst.
Yeah. Which whacker was it? Could you tell?
Nah, oh, he was a kind of bigger guy, a chubbier guy.
Oh, yeah.
A chubbier cunt.
The The conversation then switches to Soldier A, who led the assault on the bunker.
He's pissed.
Is he?
Yeah, he's going off fucking stupid way.
No. Mate, there was no way you were going to get in that door without him getting a burst.
Yeah.
Later.
That's it.
It was just right making sure he went first.
Fortunes of war.
Unfortunately, mate, it's their fucking country. That's unfortunate, but it's their fucking country.
Soldier A is apparently furious. One of his Afghan comrades is dead. It's what happens next on a patrol to catch a Taliban target that may constitute a war crime.
So after we lost that whacker, it was a few days later, we went on another mission. I was with that soldier. It was his target. We went in. I confirmed that this Afghani national was the target. I was going through the rest of his equipment just to see what else he had. And then that soldier with a Wakunish, they marched that Afghani national who was, I confirmed he was the target. They marched him about 50 metres away or so. Then the soldier ordered the prisoner to kneel back on the ground. He then motioned for the Wakunish soldier to shoot him. The soldier kind of looked at him confused, asking, wondering what he's telling him to do. And then he did it again, and then he understood what was happening. And then the soldier ordered the Wakunish to execute him. And so he just quick burst straight into his chest area.
And killed the man.
Killed the man.
And the man was handcuffed, plastic cuffed.
He was still plastic cuffed at that stage.
And you witnessed this, you could physically see this.
I could, yeah.
And what does the Australian SAS operative say after this?
He said I had to give him a win.
What did he mean by that?
Because they just lost one of their members, give them a win, let them have something.
What are you thinking?
At the time, I was just like, okay, we're executing people now.
Several weeks later, Braden Chapman is again in a Black Hawk heading out on a raid with Soldier A, who led the mud bunker assault and who ordered the killing of the Afghan detainee. The patrol fans out, heading towards a compound.
Squirter from compound has been interdicted.
A squirter is the nickname for Afghans assumed to be enemy combatants who are running for cover. Soldier A heads for the target.
I was with his patrol again. We were moving through a village. We were coming up on the target building. I didn't see him walk out of that target building, but he was about 10 metres away from it, walking from that direction across our position. When we got to within maybe 20 to 30 metres away and he saw us, he quickly grabbed his phone from his pocket and he threw it. And at that stage, he stopped. He put his hands up just like that and then just stood there. As we got closer to him, the soldier then just fired and hit him twice in the chest and then shot him through the head as he walked past him. And then from there, he just moved on.
So he shot a man in cold blood who had his hands up?
Correct, yeah. I was only 5 to 10 metres behind him at the time. And at the time, I was just like, okay, the visual image to me was the guy had his hands up and then it was almost like target practice for that soldier.
What is that in your books?
In my books, it's murder.
After the killing, Braden Chapman was ordered to go through the dead Afghan's pockets and to find the phone the man had thrown away.
That incident was pretty gruesome because another patrol joined us not long after and they had one of their assault dogs with them. And it actually came and started chewing on the head of the man who'd been shot. And I remember looking to the dog handler saying, can you get this thing away from it? Because it was pretty gruesome. And he's just like, oh, I'll let him have a taste.
Just days later, one of the SAS videos captures members of 3 Squadron discussing Soldier A and other incidents involving the patrol.
Fucking bullshit. I'm not happy with it. As a brother, it's what I want. Bash who I want, shoot it to whoever. Yeah. Get a kid, oh well, just keep shooting cunts. Yeah, exactly. Bash more cunts. Shoot a kid. Execute someone in front of fucking... support staff. Not even just support staff, but other fucking... Yeah.
I went into the office yesterday.
Terps and that.
And one of the engineers, they were going, yeah, that happened. He just took him around the corner and shot him. No, you can't.
I don't do it in front of anyone but a fucking operator.
You can't do it in front of anyone. You don't do it in front of anyone.
It's so wrong. On so many levels. Yeah, we're definitely not trying to win the war anymore.
Four Corners can reveal that Soldier A, who shot the Afghan who had his hands up, is still serving in the Special Forces. Rumours and allegations of war crimes committed by Australian Special Forces are now the subject of a wide-ranging inquiry. It's being conducted by the Inspector-General of the Australian Defence Force and headed by the New South Wales Supreme Court Judge, Paul Brereton. For almost 4 years, his inquiry has been looking into dozens of alleged incidents, an investigation that's had to penetrate the veil of secrecy around the Special Forces.
We have obligations at international law, domestic law, and indeed moral obligations to not ignore these sorts of allegations. There is potential for a prosecution under, or certainly for charges to be laid under the war crimes murder provisions of the Commonwealth Criminal Code.
The activities of Braden Chapman's squadron in Afghanistan in 2012 are of key interest to the Inspector-General.
It's definitely affected me. You try to look back at your career as, try and be proud of it, but then you've got all these incidents and, you know, you see yourself as part of the bad guys. I just feel if people don't come forward while this investigation's going on, then it's just going to be swept under the rug again.
Another incident that haunts Braden Chapman happened during a raid early in his deployment in March 2012. It involved the death of an elderly Afghan man in a village called Sarkoom. The SAS was after the commander of a Taliban bomb-making network.
What can you remember about the job before the killing?
So we landed on the far side of the building we ended up processing people on. Just walking through the village, there was there was actually a public meeting going on, so we walked over, the interpreter spoke to them, we moved on. We knew there was a couple of shootings over in the distance.
2 Afghans were killed by the SAS patrol. Defence investigators later concluded that one of the dead men had been carrying a grenade, the other an assault rifle. The Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission began an inquiry into the SAS raid of Sarkoom. Its investigators got a very different account.
According to the complaints that was registered to us, there were 2 civilians killed in Sarkoom and 7 injured. Of the 2 killed, the first person was killed, was first shot at and injured, and then arrested by Australian forces.
That person was a villager called Haji Sada.
The complaint that has been registered with us is that Haji Sardar was, yes, first injured and then taken away for investigation and was died as a result of torture during this investigation.
Braden Chapman was on the Sarkoom raid. He's the only Australian witness to speak publicly about what happened. Braden Chapman came upon Haji Sada after the Afghan had been shot and was being treated by an SAS medic. He then saw the wounded man being taken away by an SAS operator, who we'll call Soldier B.
Where was he shot?
Through the leg, but it wasn't life-threatening. And the medic, once he'd put bandages and stuff on him, he was good to go.
So this guy's got a leg wound. It's been patched up. The medic says it's not life-threatening. There's no problem. What happens next?
The senior soldier walked over, grabbed the Afghani, and then moved him off down an alleyway. I saw him go into, I wasn't sure if it was a door, it was some type of doorway, but it could have been another alleyway. And then sometime later, he came back and our medic asked him, like, what happened? Where is he? Because he'd worked on him, he considered him his patient. And then he just shook his head and said he didn't make it.
He didn't make it?
He didn't make it.
What happened then?
I know the medic was pretty upset because he knew what had happened.
What sort of discussion was had about it, if any?
He was just saying that the man was fine. There's no way he would have died, and he knew that the soldier had killed him. And that was basically it.
Villagers have told Four Corners that they heard Haji Sada crying out and later found him dead with severe bruising around the chest. The Afghan investigation found he'd been beaten to death.
What if I told you that there was a later defence inquiry into that killing and they found that killing was totally justifiable? What's your response to that?
I'd say that someone's lied, giving evidence, because there's no way that you can justify an execution.
Do you believe there was a culture of covering these things up? It's not just the incident, but it's the cover-up. Is there cover-up?
Yeah, definitely. When you're back at the unit, people would make jokes about the size of the rug that they've swept everything under, and that one day it'll all come out. And, you know, people are going to be thrown in jail for murder or anything else that they've done.
For Braden Chapman, the death of Haji Sada at Sarkoom was like a prophecy fulfilled because of the soldier alleged to have committed the killing.
He was the soldier who told me that I need to be prepared for him to put a gun to someone's head and pull the trigger. And he was the same soldier who was violent to a lot of other Afghanis as well. So it didn't honestly surprise me that had happened.
Braden Chapman says he saw Soldier B punch a child in the face and confront another boy with a dog.
It was on top of a mountain and there was just an old man and a young child up there and their dog. The dog was barking, but on a leash, and he told the boy to hold the chain up near towards the head so that he could hold it still, and then he shot the dog right in front of the child.
So he shot the dog as the child was holding it?
Yes.
Later that same year, 2012, Australian soldiers were out for blood. A rogue Afghan soldier named Hekmatullah had killed 3 of their comrades. Special Forces soldiers from 2 Squadron SAS were going from village to village searching for him. Four Corners has spent months collecting evidence on the ground in Afghanistan about what happened. 2 squadrons swept into the village of Sola looking for Hekmatullah. There they focused on the local mosque. Rafiullah was just 8 or 9 years old at the time. He was inside the mosque praying with his father, the Imam, Haji Raz Muhammad.
When my father finished his prayer, they kicked him in the head while he was trying to stand up. His turban fell down and they stood him up. They tore his turban up into pieces and tied up the hands of the other people in the mosque. They beat me up and they said, "Why are you standing here? What did he give you?" I said, "He didn't give me anything." They beat me up very badly and told me, "Go home. Why are you standing here?"
Throughout the village, men were rounded up by the Australians.
When they came to the mosque, they arrested us, including the mullah. He was handcuffed and blindfolded.
They were standing behind us. We were not allowed to talk. There was an interpreter with them. He was talking to us. Guns were pointed at our mouths.
Blindfolded, the men rounded up by the SAS listened as the Australians carried out their raid.
They were firing shots and kicking doors. So people didn't know whether it was a shot or the door being kicked.
By the end of the raid, Haji Raz Muhammad and his son Abdul Jalil were dead.
People told me about my brother, Abdul Jalil. There was a corner. A soldier was waiting at that corner and he shot my brother in the mouth from a distance. They shot him with another bullet in his heart. My father was shot with one bullet in the side of the head and another in the side of his body.
We found the son in the night after the Australians left at 4 o'clock. And we found the father in the morning. There were fig trees. He was shot among the fig trees and nobody saw him. When the sun rose in the morning, we found him. They were shot in the head and laying down like this.
Four Corners has obtained this video of the dead men, which shows terrible injuries to both.
The Commission's investigations about 2 people killed in Sola in 2012 found out that they were both civilians. In our investigations, the son was walking out of the mosque when he was attacked, and then following him, the father was attacked. So there was no attempt from their side to attack the Australian forces.
A defence investigation found that the killings of both men were justified, because the son reached for an SAS soldier's weapon and because the father was allegedly seen talking on a radio. The Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission rejects this.
According to our investigation, none of these 2 people were involved in any military activity or in combat.
Four Corners can reveal that the killing of the father, Haji Raz Muhammad, is being investigated as part of the inquiry by the Inspector General of the ADF into possible war crimes. The key allegation is that he was shot in cold blood. Also being investigated is whether a radio was then planted on the dead man's body in order to justify the killing. The Inspector General of the ADF is investigating whether the planting of radios or ICOMs was common practice. Braden Chapman says it was.
So often I'd get calls over the radio to see if I'd picked any up. We couldn't really plant the ICOMs I carried on an Afghani because they were too clean. Afghani's equipment is always dirty, so you can't really plant clean equipment. I never actually handed over any, but I did see plenty that were planted.
So you saw radios planted on dead Afghans?
Yeah, they hadn't got them off me, but they definitely got them off somebody else and walked over and sat it next to a body.
Why would a soldier want to plant an ICOM or a radio on a dead Afghan?
We could actually shoot people who were reporting on our position. So if they had an ICOM and were reporting on us, we could actually fire upon them.
So basically they're planting radios on dead Afghans in order to justify the killing of that person?
Correct, yes.
Braden Chapman says weapons were also planted on the bodies of Afghans killed by the Australian Special Forces.
Other members of my troop back in Australia, they did used to joke about how the same serial number was in every single photo of a dead Afghani.
So the same serial number on a gun?
Yeah, so, you know, inferring that somebody was planting these AK-47s.
And this one gun kept popping up, did it? That was the joke?
That was the joke, yeah.
For years, allegations of war crimes have swirled around Australia's Special Forces in Afghanistan, but they've never been proven. Tonight, for the first time, footage obtained by Four Corners shows the unlawful killing of an unarmed Afghan civilian. It's May 2012, and the soldiers of 3 Squadron SAS are heading north from their base on 2 Black Hawk helicopters. Their destination is a village called Dejalzi Hasanzi. The target is an insurgent bomb maker. The helmet camera footage you're seeing is from the SAS patrol dog handler, and what you will see next could result in charges of war crimes. The dog handler heads out into the lead with the patrol scout, who we'll call Soldier C.
Hey, Sam's over there.
They are being guided by the two Black Hawks ahead, whose crew have spotted a man in a field. The dog, named Quake, is then let off the leash.
Hey, come! Let's in a car! Quake down!
The dog handler's gun is trained on a figure in the distance, who drops down into the field. At the field, the dog handler and Soldier C come across a young man amongst the wheat, who's trying to fight off Quake.
Quake! Leave! Quake!
In the man's hand appears to be a set of red prayer beads. No weapon or radio can be seen. The Afghan is compliant and quiet on the ground.
Down.
As the dog is called off, Soldier C trains his weapon on the Afghan from very close range. He then turns to the dog handler.
I don't know, mate. Drop this gun! Quake, no! Quake! Stop! Leave! Quake! Leave! Heal.
3 shots from close range. The Afghan is dead, and Soldier C walks off.
No! Heal!
The whole thing, from landing to killing, takes less than 3 minutes.
Heal! Heal!
So this is a video in 2012 when we're in Afghanistan, and I just want to show you what happens in this field and just see what you know about it. So he shot the Afghan. Did you know about this? Or
I didn't know.
You haven't seen this before?
I have not.
And do you know who those soldiers are?
I do, yeah.
And he was well held, and he's turned to his superior officer over here. He said, "Do you want me to drop this cunt?" And he says that 3 times. In your mind, what do you make of that whole situation?
It's just a straight-up execution, really. Yeah, he's asked someone of a superior rank what he should do, but it comes down to the soldier pulling the trigger, and it's a straight-up execution.
4 Corners tracked down a neighbour. Farmer Abdul Khalik was in a nearby field when the Australians swept in.
We heard gunshots. He was around 300 metres away from us. Dad Muhammad was a good man. His time was up in this world. I was told that his face was swollen and covered in blood. He wasn't recognisable.
We also found the dead man's father, who was away the day his son died. He returned immediately to bury him.
He was in a shroud. Because of my grief, I was sitting over there. I asked, "Where is he?" And they said, "He's there." I went to see. His face had wounds. I covered his face and told them to take him to the graveyard. After his burial, I came back to see the place. I saw the wheat field where he was killed. The wheat was flattened all around.
The death of the man, named Dad Muhammad, was later investigated by the Defence Force after Afghan tribal elders complained. What the ADF investigators were told by SAS soldiers and what the video shows are 2 very different things. Soldier C claimed that the Afghan had been shot because he'd been seen with a radio. he said he engaged the Afghan from 15 to 20 metres away in self-defence. The investigators found that the Afghan was lawfully killed because he posed a direct threat to the Australians. Four Corners can reveal that Soldier C, who killed the Afghan, is still serving in the Special Forces.
They're going to look back and see that we were the guys in there murdering and invading and not there to do something that is honourable.
In your opinion, were war crimes committed in Afghanistan by Australia's Special Forces?
Yes, there were. You can't shoot unarmed people and not call that murder.
About 100 metres that way, friendlies.
If a case is made and if prosecutions are successful, war crimes murder carries imprisonment for life as a potential maximum penalty.
The Inspector General of the Australian Defence Force is investigating the role of troops on the ground. But Braden Chapman believes the officers who ran the Special Forces should also wear some of the blame.
Definitely, because it is a culture issue as well. And these incidents that are happening would filter through to them. They know what's going on over there. I just want the truth to come out and people who did commit crimes to be held accountable.
Do some people that you serve with deserve to go to jail?
Yes.
For Braden Chapman, speaking out is his chance to atone for staying silent about what he witnessed in Afghanistan, even if it could come at a cost.
It's a very courageous thing to do. And in fact, it demonstrates the integrity of this bloke.
And should a man like him, who has the courage to speak out, should he be celebrated for his courage, or do you think he'll be hung out to dry?
I hate to say it, but I suspect there will be some adverse treatment. But I'd like to say that he and others like him would be congratulated for their integrity and for their courage.
Given you're talking to us, does that worry you what the blowback could be for you?
Sometimes I think about physical danger, like I'm reporting on highly trained soldiers who murdered people in Afghanistan and didn't care about it. And for a second, I do think about that kind of thing.
Retribution?
Yeah, if people will come after me.
And was there anything that happened over there that you think where you crossed a line or that you're ashamed of, or is it more of a case that you wish you could have done more about what you saw?
I didn't break any rules of engagement, but looking back now, I'm not sure how a complaint would have went at the time if I voiced my concern, but I feel now that even if it had ruined my career back then, I probably should have made that complaint.
Do you think it would have gone anywhere?
Nowhere.
And the images that you've got in your head that you've shared with me today, how long will they live on in your mind?
I don't think they'll ever go away.